In these uncertain economic times, it's easy to be worried about protecting your wealth, your hard-earned savings, and your family's financial future. Plunging interest rates, the devaluating dollar, and political unrest constantly threaten what you have worked hard to earn and all that you own. That's why now it's more important than ever to protect your assets and have the money you need to make your dreams come true. Welcome to the Global Wealth Fortress Report with successful global entrepreneur and wealth preservation expert Joel Nagel. Joel's helped thousands of people just like you protect what you have so that you can make even more and make your every dream come true. So, sit back and enjoy Joel Nagel's offshore expert advice on how you can live the good life at a great price, where the sun never sets on your financial fortress.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Global Wealth Fortress Report. We're doing our special program on Belize this week, and I'm coming to you live from the headquarters of Tropic Airlines. It's the national airline of Belize, and I'm with the company president, my good friend, Johnny Grief.
How you doing, Joel?
Great. Thanks for being on the show today.
My pleasure.
And Johnny, I guess before we get in talking about tourism and all the things that are important to you, tell us how you ended up here in Belize, because you're basically a lifelong Belizean.
My dad was a World War II fighter pilot and flight instructor. And after the war, he was working in South Florida, and he had a student that had a little airline in Belize, and his pilots were taking advantage of him. So the guy wanted my dad to teach him how to fly. So Dad did, and they got to be buddies. And then the fellow whose name is Kurt Bender, who ironically was a Luftwaffe glider pilot, and my dad was a U.S. Air Force fighter pilot. So they almost may have crossed paths before. Came down to Belize and met my mom. Storybook romance, fell in love. He went back home a month later, and they got married. They got married in Belize. He went back home a month later, and then when her visa came through, he sent for her. They moved to Kentucky, where he had a job as a production engineer for Modine Manufacturing. In those days, they made all the radiators for all American-produced cars, so it was a big deal. And Mom got terribly homesick, so he brought her home. And then he was able to look at San Pedro through a tourist eyes, and literally never went back. Called him on the phone, or in those days it was a telex. Sent a telex, said, I quit my job, sell my house, sell my stocks, sell my bonds. I'm staying in Belize, and he did.
Well, that's really a great story, and I know he is really the pioneer of tourism here on this island, your mother and your father, and they have a nice statue for him over in front of the main passenger terminal here in San Pedro.
Unfortunately, never got to see it, but I guess that's the way that stuff works, right?
Sure.
So then, when they moved back to Belize, I was 5 and grew up about half here, half there. Did all my education in the States. And when I got out of college, I didn't graduate. I just left. When I got out of college, I came home and I wanted to be a sailboat captain, but nobody would let me captain their sailboat, and Dad, Mom wouldn't buy me one. So I started thinking about aviation, and they did buy me an airplane because it was a needed service at the time, because there was no aviation. There were no airplanes based in San Pedro. They were based at Belize Municipal, so that meant a double deadhead to go to international to pick people up, bring them out here, go back to international, and then back to municipal. So I got in the business in '79 with the help, as I said, of my parents. And it was just kind of being in the right place at the right time. And now,
it's amazing. Yeah.
40 years later, we're still going strong.
I think the first time I came was '91, and I remember it was still a pretty primitive little, run strip and, a little hut at the end where you had your operations. And to look at all this now, it's tremendous. Your hangars, your passenger terminal, it's just unbelievable what you've accomplished.
One of Dad's first customers with the little airline that he had that preceded Tropic Air was the Catholic Church, and Father Roskowski was the San Pedro priest. And he said, John, I believe you scared the devil out of more people than I have.
Oh, that's a great story. I got to remember that one. Well, again, I know that your family is very attached to the overall development of this island from a tourism perspective.
We are.
Talk a little bit about tourism, how important it is to the country. Then we'll obviously have to talk about coronavirus a little bit. But before we talk about that, just the importance of tourism as an industry here in Belize.
Well, the average American tourist spends 2,000 U.S. cash in country. So if you figure we have 100,000, let's just say very conservatively, 100,000 genuine tourists, you're talking, that's up in the billions. So it's an incredible asset. It's a bunch of crazy foreigners dancing around in your country for a week, leaving all their money and going home. It doesn't tax the infrastructure. It doesn't hurt the society. It doesn't tax police force or anything else. So as Belize transitioned out of agricultural and out of lumber export and even out of fish export, it kind of, through no particular planning of our own, transitioned into tourism. And now tourism is responsible for the government admits to 40%, but I'd say it's probably closer to 60%.
Well, particularly given the multiplier effect of tourism
Exactly.
dollars. Yeah. So, okay, so we have a country that's really dependent. It's got a few other things, agricultural, financial services, but tourism is truly number one. You're sitting at the pinnacle of that. We've had double-digit growth year after year after year for the last, I don't know how many years, 15 plus years. And all of a sudden, March this year, boom, we hit the coronavirus. Well, tell us a little bit about how that's impacted Belize in general, tourism, and Tropic Air specifically.
We were shocked with the speed at which it happened, and every time we thought we'd set a new landmark for loss of business, we'd lose another half. The worst it got was we lost 98% of our business. We're down to only 75% now, which sounds horrible, but we're really, really, really
You go from
happy
2% up to 25%.
Yeah, all the way up to 25%. We feel really happy about it.
Well, the tourists seem like they are trickling back in now, and the retirees and property owners, they're slowly coming.
I think, Joel, everybody is fatigued with it. I think we've proven that coronavirus only affects people with pre-existing conditions. It only affects the elderly, so we protect those people, and everybody else travels. Mm-hmm. I mean, if I could afford it, which I can't, I'd take my 5-year-old and my wife and go to Disney World for a week, because I've had it right up to here with being locked indoors.
Yeah. Well, and again, I mean, we're sitting here in your office, and I really appreciate you hosting me for this interview.
My pleasure.
So what do you see going forward? I mean, Thanksgiving, Christmas into, when the snowbirds all come, do you see it getting anywhere close to normal, or what's your prognosis for, let's say, the 2020, 2021 winter high season?
I can't really speak intelligently to what's going to happen for the rest of the year, but my instinct is, and I've not trusted my instinct at my own jeopardy. So I think by April which is the height of our season, I think by April of next year, Tropic anyway, will be up to about 80% of where we were the previous 2 years before that. And I think that'll be a good place for us. We'll be leaner and meaner. We had to let go about a third of our workforce, or about 120 people, and this was emotionally horrible for me, because they weren't just my employees; they were like family. A lot of the average age of employment here is 20 years. So we had to let a lot of lifers go, as it were. But I'm very, very optimistic. The opening in October didn't do much for us financially, but psychologically it was a huge lift. It's what we really needed.
Yeah, and I hear that when I talk to bar owners and restaurants, and they're saying, yeah, the people are coming in very, very slowly, but at least it is a start.
Yep.
So, well, before we close off, do you have any message, or would you like to give a special invitation for anybody watching this to come to Belize and come to San Pedro?
Come to Belize. There's lots of room. No hurricanes.
Yeah, that's true. There's definitely lots of room out there for capacity. Well, I know you're extremely busy, and I want to thank you for taking a few minutes to talk to our audience. I think obviously nothing goes in this country without you,
Thank you.
without airplanes,
Thank
and I think it's probably the most vital industry here in Belize. So thanks
Thank you
for
for saying so.
taking the time.
Pleasure seeing
All right.
you. God bless.
Thanks. Bless you too. Thanks for joining us here, and we'll see you next time on the next edition of the Global Wealth Fortress Report. Till then, goodbye.
Thanks for joining Joel Nagel and the Global Wealth Fortress Report, a whole new approach to asset protection and estate planning, so that now you can live the good life at a great price, where the sun never sets on your financial fortress.